Hello, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Or, of course, if you are watching on our growing YouTube channel, that is Tar Heel Illustrated. Got two guys joining me tonight. Of course, you got our very own publisher, Andrew Jones, and our director of basketball recruiting and an analyst for us, David Sisk. And wild day today, guys. A lot of stuff going on this afternoon surrounding Carolina basketball. We're here to kind of break it down and kind of what's gone on over the last – I was going to say 12 hours, but it's been shorter than that, really, the last, 5 or 6 hours in particular. So before I'll let you guys, I'll kick it to you guys. Let me just kind of run through what has happened today and some of the ongoing stuff that's happening. So obviously the news came out last night. UCLA was supposed to have a game. Their head coach, Mick Cronin, went into COVID protocol about an hour before that game was supposed to tip off. I believe it was around about 7 p.m. That game was called off for COVID reasons. UCLA not able to play. So now Carolina was set to play UCLA on Saturday in the CBS Sports Classic in Las Vegas. Now Carolina is set to play Kentucky because of UCLA's COVID issues. Kentucky was set to play Ohio State in the other game in that tournament as well. So essentially just kind of a flip-flop there. Carolina now playing Kentucky because that Kentucky and Ohio State game was canceled. Ohio State having COVID issues. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Carolina, Kentucky on Saturday. It's I'm sure a game that a lot of Carolina fans are pretty excited about. It's always a good one between those two. So AJ, I'm going to kick it to you first because I want you to kind of talk about what's gone on over the last few hours, kind of behind the scenes with some of the schedule changes, and just kind of let us in on what you know about that.
Well, I think uncertainty for most of the day would be the word to cover it for fans, for media, and for the programs.
Yeah.
UNC didn't know what was going on good part of the day. There were certainly conversations. They wanted an answer from UCLA. And I think from UCLA, it was kind of hard to give an answer for something like that because you could test positive for COVID one day and then next day not, and there are false tests, false positives. I think with Omicron not being as serious as others, I think perhaps there are other things involved. And I'm not getting this from UNC. I'm just speaking sort of in general. So there was a lot of patience in allowing UCLA to cross its T's and dot its I's with respect to what kind of team it would have for this weekend, because it's one thing if it's just Mick Cronin and it's isolated. But the head coach has contact with all the players. And we have these incubation protocols as well with these things now. So I think that was part of it as well. So Carolina was looking for opponents for a while because until about 3:30 today, Ohio State and Kentucky were going to play in the second game in Las Vegas. And then the Ohio State announcement came out. So they were looking at options. I was scrambling for options. I thought, hey, how about Virginia Commonwealth coming to the Dean Dome Saturday afternoon? Because VCU was supposed to play Penn State Saturday. That was canceled because Penn State has COVID issues. And I thought VCU at Carolina, and look, it's not UCLA. It's not in Vegas, but a quality opponent. I even posted on our board. I said, hey, just charge $15 a head, general admission, sell the thing out. Cut VCU a check, donate some money to tornado victims or something like that, and make it turn into a positive. But obviously that's not happening. They're going to play Kentucky in Vegas. They played Kentucky last year in an empty arena in Cleveland. I was there. I was one of about 100 people in total in attendance. There were no fans. It was just the teams, team personnel, game essential personnel, officials, about 6 security guards, or maybe even 4, and about 8 members of the media. And I was one of the people there. That was the most surreal basketball experience I had last year. And Carolina won the game. It was Kerwin Walton's coming out party. And I thought it was a really important win for the Tar Heels, one of their better wins of last season. So here they are again. Carolina, Kentucky should play every year.
Agreed. So
at least we're getting it back-to-back years now. They stopped doing it when they both joined in with the CBS Sports Classic. They stopped playing every year. And they were going every 3 years or so in the Classic. So now we get them back-to-back years, which I'm all for.
Yeah.
I can't win. I can't win in Kentucky and North Carolina playing every year. You don't want to do that one to me.
That's just a lot of work for you that day.
No, I just want to you've got one side. Both sides are going to accuse me of pulling for the other. And I'm not talking about the teams or the program. They don't know who David Sisk is. I'm talking about the Twitter world.
Yeah.
Well, and just to clarify, for some of you who don't know, David also covers recruiting and does some of the similar stuff with the Kentucky site as well, which I think makes him so extremely valuable. He knows basketball and everything else, but he's watching the two best programs of all time, and passionate fan bases, and every bounce of every ball against every opponent is extremely important. So David has his finger on the pulse of these two programs.
Basically, all I've watched this year, I would say 98% of every play that I've watched this year in college basketball has been run by those two teams. So
have time for anything else, right? I know how that goes.
Sometimes that's not a positive.
David, I want to ask you this real quick. What do you, when you hear about the matchup, Carolina, Kentucky, obviously you cover both teams in some respects. What were your kind of initial thoughts about those two teams playing each other? Because like I said, I think for a lot of fans, it's a really exciting matchup.
Well, to be honest, I was hoping they could pull it off. I've said as I kind of watched the teams play this year that I would like to see Kentucky and North Carolina play, because I think they have a lot of similarities. Now there's differences, but I think just as far as how good the teams are, they're pretty close. If you'll go back, Andrew, you'll remember this. When we had the Zoom on the Friday night Zoom, where we had all our subscribers at Tar Heel Illustrated come on, and somebody asked me about how I would compare the teams, and this was after, I don't remember if there were any more than exhibition games played at that time, but kind of looking at the roster and going through that, I thought they were close, but I thought North Carolina, even though everybody in the world thought Kentucky might be a little bit better at that time, I said, I think North Carolina might be better. I like the roster a little bit better. And then, North Carolina starts out like they do against Tennessee and Purdue and even some mid-major teams that they barely scraped by, were giving up 90 points. I said, boy, that one aged well. But Kentucky's had their own issues. North Carolina, I think, since then has played really well. They defeated Georgia Tech, and I know the schedule people look mid-majors, but they defeated North Carolina and defeated Michigan and Georgia Tech pretty handily. So I think they've responded and they've played well. I think I look at teams or have major inside game presence, have two strong guards in a backcourt, both trying to probably fight their way through the 3 spot. I think North Carolina is a little better at the 4. Well, obviously got more depth. I like them better at the 4. I think that's a big part of Garcia and Manick. But I think it's going to be a very, very competitive game with two teams that have a lot in common.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, it's exciting, like I said, for a lot of fans, because like AJ hit on earlier, it's just the Carolina Kentucky game is always such a big one. I agree that they should play every year and everything like that. So I'm looking forward to seeing kind of how the Tar Heels play and how they play against Kentucky, who's interesting enough, sitting at 7-2 on the year. I know only a loss in the opening game to Duke, and obviously a loss to Notre Dame in their last game. AJ, before I kick it to you, I want to ask David about that real quick before we kind of hit more on Carolina, because obviously we cover Carolina. What happened to that game? Because I remember seeing that scoreline and being a little bit shocked, because it is a Notre Dame team that has struggled this season for the most part.
There was part of that game. Kentucky last year they weren't going to have a Final Four team. It was an historically bad year, their worst record since 1926. And but they were in so many games where you go to about the 6-minute mark, the 4-minute mark, and it's a tie game, and they never score again, and they get outscored down a stretch like 10-0 or 12-2 or whatever. And the same thing happened with Notre Dame. I mean, they had at the 6-minute mark, they had a 5-point lead. If Keon Brooks makes his foul shot, 1 or 2, they go up 6, and from then, I mean, no, they just got torched. They were 2-19 from 3. This is supposed to be a better 3-point shooting team this year. So Notre Dame just packed it in on Oscar Tshiebwe, kind of dared Kentucky to shoot the ball. And on the other end, there were a lot of breakdowns defensively. And that's what Kentucky did last year. They broke down defensively during stretch. They got back cut to death. A lot of poor play away from the ball, no head turn, ball watching, out of stances, and Notre Dame's just back cutting on play after play after play. Notre Dame basically beat them down that stretch shooting a layup drill. So it was a game that really they should have won, but it was a game that got away from them in the last 5 or 6 minutes just because they couldn't score on a one end against a packed-in defense, and they gave up layups on the other end. And they had guarded pretty well up to that stretch. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, it was kind of reminiscent of last year because it was like another team showed up defensively in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah. AJ, looking at the Tar Heels, we'll hit on them for a little bit, and I'll ask AJ this, and David, feel free to hit on it afterwards. Looking at the Tar Heels coming into this game, obviously 5 straight wins, sitting at 8-2, 1-0 in the ACC. Carolina's playing really good basketball right now. We've definitely seen a jump, going back to the Mohegan Sun tournament. We've really seen a different kind of team since those 2 losses to Purdue and Tennessee, especially that Tennessee game where they were just basically ran out of the gym. So going into this game, what kind of position do you think the Tar Heels are in? Because I think for the Tar Heels, it's a perfect time to play a quality opponent like a Kentucky or like a UCLA, that they were originally scheduled to play. I think Carolina's hitting this at the right time.
Yeah, I think they've made progress since Mohegan Sun. They've been a lot better defensively. I think they've been dialed in more defensively. Their defensive communication, David and I have talked about this a couple of times in some of our pods about they're doing some different stuff than they did before. Icing the ball, trying to get the ball to go to the side and create some take away the middle of the lane, the middle drives and stuff like that. They've had some more success, but they haven't played Tennessee and Purdue either during this period. Yeah. They did beat Michigan by 21. I thought Michigan maybe had responded well. They had a huge win at Nebraska, huge in terms of margin, but then they lose to Minnesota. Purdue, they lost since that game, and they nearly lost NC State the other day. I think Purdue's really good, and Carolina, I think, showed a lot of fight. I think Tennessee is sort of the eyesore game, the one that you look at and say, well, you can't. If Carolina goes back there to that day and shows any resemblance of that club moving forward, they're going to lose to most of the teams on their schedule, including obviously somebody like Kentucky. I think the Tar Heels they were looking forward to playing UCLA. UCLA is number 4 in the country. I think right now the perception is that UCLA is sort of a bigger monster than UK is. I think people look at UCLA as a national championship contender, and I think that's so. This is a club that I think would pose more challenges to Carolina. I think the individual defensive assignments would be stressed a little bit more in that game. So with Kentucky, I'm not sure they're going to have as much of that challenge, but it's still a significant challenge. And this team needs to beat somebody good. And they need to beat somebody good that isn't in the ACC, and they need to beat them away from Chapel Hill to start, developing more of that mindset that North Carolina basketball has carried for years. Hubert has said he wants these guys to have their own experiences. Well, part of the typical UNC experience is going anywhere to play anybody, and this club needs to do that as the layering process continues. So this will be that opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. It's a big time matchup. David, what are your thoughts? I know obviously I love your film reviews you do after the games. I think it's awesome to kind of see that and get that kind of X's and O's talk on TarHeelIllustrated.com. So kind of building off of what AJ said, what are your thoughts on where the Tar Heels are at? Like I said, coming off that 5-game winning streak, 8-2 overall. Seems like they're playing some of their best basketball this season.
I like where they're at. And that's one reason I'd like to see them play Kentucky, because to me, this would be a litmus test of where both teams are at. Mm-hmm. Because like I said, I think there's similarities. I'll kind of tell you the difference in the feel right now, just fan base and like on Cats Illustrated and Tar Heel Illustrated. I think with North Carolina, the vibes are starting to go pretty good, but you wonder, there's still some uncertainty. And like I said, I think Kentucky is so similar that it would give you that a feel right now of where they're at because they go into ACC play. Mm-hmm. And I think, and I really didn't think about it, and Andrew made a great point about Tennessee, because Tennessee's another team that I would compare to the two. Not a great outside shooting team, a physical team, more in the half court, really strong in the back court, physical inside. And, I think North Carolina would certainly like to redeem themselves from that. Kentucky, on the other side, I think there's a pervading thought through that fan base that this team is not as talented as what they thought it was going to be when the year started. And I'll give you a reason we say that. And one reason that I've kind of thought that and my word behind the scenes with some people I talk to is sometimes they can be pedestrian. And the reason I say that, go back to the Southern game that they played before their last game against Notre Dame. And they won that by 12, 13, about the same difference. North Carolina beat Furman. And this was a team that wasn't big, very quick in the backcourt, a fast team. And North Carolina and Kentucky's guards, rather, they couldn't get by them. They couldn't shake them. They couldn't beat them. And I'm watching this, and I'm like, that's not good when you go in SEC play and you play Alabama, LSU, Arkansas, Tennessee, Auburn, teams like that. Just they can't create. And I think that showed a little bit when they played Notre Dame. And I look at North Carolina, and I kind of look, and the thing I liked about them early on in the year, looking at it, I think everything complements, because I think Caleb Love can certainly create. I think R.J. Davis creates. And then you've got Manick and Dawson Garcia playing away they are at the 4. And, Andrew and I have touched on this. I think offensively the pieces are there, and they mesh so well together that you can put a guy like Leaky Black to be our lockdown guy. You can say, okay, you're going to be our guy at the 3 to lock people down. And you may not be as talented offensively, but we got enough pieces with the rest of these guys that we can afford that. Whereas maybe in the past 2-3 years, you couldn't do it. So I like where North Carolina's at. I thought it was going to be a good team. I thought they were going to be a top 20 team, perhaps top 15. And I'll be honest with you, I think this team's about where I expected them. The way they're playing right now is what I expected. And that's one reason, like I said, I want to see them play North Carolina so you can get play Kentucky, so I can see North Carolina get a better feel for it.
Yeah, and I think Carolina's getting better. Hubert's taking some criticism from not playing the bench as much and not going deep. Dontrez and DeMarco aren't playing. Justin McCoy didn't get into the last minute against Furman. He didn't play against Georgia Tech, didn't play against Tennessee. Kerwin Walton's minutes have dwindled. But I think Kerwin is trying to become the best team he can right now with his core contingent, the group he thinks that can lead them into Durham and get a win, lead them into the second weekend of March and get a win, and then maybe try to add some of the other parts to sort of bolster and deepen what they are. It's kind of a reverse approach that Roy has taken. That's what I suspect is going on. But I do like the way they're coming along. Their communication on defense is a lot better. They're rebounding the ball better. They're boxing out more. The attention to detail has been better in the last couple of weeks than it was previously. And part of that's chemistry. Part of that, I think, is comfort of knowing what they're all about. Part of that is recognizing what your strengths and weaknesses are and how to compensate at times. I do think this club has a lot of improving to do. And I do think they need to get better in the glass. I think rebounding is an area where they could be in serious trouble. On Saturday, Kentucky is a fantastic rebounding team. They had the best rebounder in the nation. And Carolina had not been a very good rebounding team until the last couple of games. The way they boarded against Furman, I know Furman's not a very big club, but the way they went after the boards, Caleb Love getting 5 and 6 boards in some of these games, and a lot of them defensively, and he gets the rebound and he's kicking it up the court right away. That's North Carolina basketball. So we've seen more segments the last couple of weeks of them having stretches where they really look like Carolina. They still have those stretches where they look a little bit like Mohegan Sun. And it's going to take time before this club ever puts together what people call the perfect game. And I'm not sure that they'll have the perfect game Saturday against Kentucky. And I don't think they need to have a perfect game to win. They need to shoot well from the perimeter. They need to at least be competitive on the glass, and they need to keep the turnovers down to have a chance to win this game.
Yeah. Last thing I want to ask you guys before we wrap this one up, how important is this game for Carolina? We've talked about it a little bit in the past about, looking at, you don't want to get into ACC play and have to pick up quality wins over quality opponents. You want to be able to pick some up in, your non-conference schedule. Obviously, Carolina losing to Purdue and Tennessee, missed opportunities there. You do have that win over Michigan. You can maybe even throw that win over Furman potentially, because I do think Furman is a good ball club and will do some good things in the SoCon. I think that could help you a little bit. But for me, it's a big opportunity because you want to pick those wins up like you guys have talked about in some podcasts before you dive into ACC play. So, AJ, I'll start with you, and then David, feel free to add on to it. How big is this game for Carolina on Saturday?
Well, I'm not sure there are a lot of wins in the ACC that can help you a ton.
A good point.
The league's lost the league has lost 47 non-conference games, which is disgusting. It's just the most I've seen since the expansion. It's the most, and they're losing bad games. They're losing to bad teams. They've been competitive in some of the really good teams they play, but they're losing. So Carolina needs a game. I mean, they needed UCLA, and they'll take Kentucky, but they'll need Kentucky to do some damage in the SEC and be a good team. They need Michigan to win games. So I think this is a very important game because it's their last opportunity to pick up a quality non-conference win. I do think Furman could end up being one of those sneaky top 50 NET type wins.
Yeah, I do too.
Because they're going to win a lot of games in the Southern Conference. But you don't want to rely on a win over Michigan at home when Michigan's struggling some, and a win over Furman to bolster your resume, and then have to go 15-5 or 16-4 in the ACC just to have a shot at like a 3 or a 4 seed. Because the league is so down right now, that might be what Carolina's looking at. So I think this is a really big game. When you think about the stuff that people are going to grind through their mind in February and early March, when they start projecting and you look back and say, man, boy, if they had that game back, they'd be better situated right now. Take care of the game now, and you may not have to think that way in early March.
Yeah, definitely.
And by the way, and I also think this club just needs to win.
Yeah.
They need to feel like Carolina. Hubert has talked to us about that a lot, and I know he sent that message to them. And I think Kentucky, they'll be excited for that because it is UK. They even said after the game Tuesday night, some of the players said, yeah, we're already thinking UCLA. Hubert went in the locker room. I can't remember if it was Caleb or Dawson Garcia said this to us, but Hubert went in there and said, okay, nice win, jump up and down, celebrate. Okay, now you got UCLA next. Yeah. You got a big one next. You have an opportunity. So I think that they probably would be pretty easy to adjust, knowing that you've got Kentucky up on the schedule, which, by the way, is the great uniform game of college basketball. When you see that word Kentucky and North Carolina on the jerseys lining up at the center tip circle, to me, that's goosebump stuff.
Yeah, they've had some instant classics over the years. Well, David, last thing I want to ask you too as well, just kind of adding on to that, how big is it of it is a game for Carolina, and Kentucky as well? Because I'm looking at Kentucky's schedule right now, and I know the SEC is a better conference, and right now, and you have better opportunities to pick up bigger wins and get some ranked teams in conference play. But looking at Kentucky, it's kind of like the two solid opponents they've played. Above average teams, you would say, and even Notre Dame's been struggling. In Duke and Notre Dame, they've lost. I mean, you're looking at a Kentucky team that really hasn't picked up a quality win yet so far. Feel free to disagree with that, but how big is this game for both teams?
No, you're right. And I'll go, and I'm going to give you a stat that's going to stun you here. I think I may be the first one. I've seen several people do it since. I think I may be the first one to actually tweeted this out. In the last 25 contests against Power 5 opponents, John Calipari's 8-17. So, and I said it sounds like the Dan Mullen resume. When one reason they gave for firing him. Well, I'm sorry, I had to look back. I thought I heard a leak here in my room. But anyway, he went
dangerous there in Tennessee, man.
It is. We're getting. I mean, it's 70 degrees and it's raining again here in the middle of December. It makes us nervous. But they're 8-17, and that was one thing. Like Dan Mullen was 2-8 in his last 10 games against, and that's it has that kind of a ring to it. This is a bigger game for, I think, just the sheer psychological balance for Kentucky and Kentucky fans than it is for North Carolina. I mean, Kentucky, they don't need to lose this game. And then they got Louisville again Tuesday, and they're now, they've got High Point in there. Tubby Smith's going to come back and have his name, whatever, retired, which is great. Cool. But then you go into the SEC, and I know Ken Palm right now, he's projecting 11 losses for them. So this is one that they need. But I look at the North Carolina end of it for two reasons. It's big for them on the court because I think, like I said, this is a test to let you know where you're at because they're similar. And I think if North Carolina fans win this game, I think they're going to be feeling good, about how this team has recovered. Now, as far as Andrew brought up the point about the resume, I go back to the Southeastern Conference. up till really this year. I think this year is the first time that they've really got clout. But I go back to Alder Kenpom, and the last couple of years I've been with the Cats Illustrated for I guess 4 or 5 years now. So I've watched closely throughout the year the Kenpom efficiency ratings, and 2 years ago when COVID hit, they ended up like 16-2, 15-3 in the SEC, and they couldn't even crack the top 30. And they were, I thought they had a really good team at that time, but the thing was they couldn't get quality wins in the league. I mean, they had good wins, but they didn't have great wins. And this is before I started working with Tar Heel Illustrated. I was also doing work with the Minnesota site, and Minnesota actually was ranked higher in KenPom going into the Big Ten tournament, and they were sub 500, and they were ranked like 22nd, and they were like 13-14 was their record, something like that, because what the Big Ten is night in, night out.
Yeah.
And I think that the NCAA, the way they have it set up now, they respect that. So yeah, if you're North Carolina, with the games you played so far, I don't have a lot of faith in Michigan. And then obviously this one here, and then you go into the league outside of Duke. If you could beat them, what would your great win be? So they're going to have to, this would be big for them on the resume end of it. Kentucky is going to be able to pick up more resume situations and win. Like I said, they still what they've got in the league is just a gauntlet with Alabama, with LSU, with Arkansas, with Auburn, with Tennessee. It's night in and night out. So they can get wins there. So from that standpoint, North Carolina really needs this.
Yeah, definitely. Even got Kansas on the schedule, I'm seeing too. So
yeah, they play that Big Ten, the SEC Big Ten schedule.
It doesn't get any easier.
And also one more thing to that is Carolina's ACC schedule. When we looked at it 2 months ago, before we saw the league vomit all over itself, it looked like they got a favorable side of the schedule. Virginia's terrible. They come to Chapel Hill, and they got their home and homes are Louisville, Duke State. Clemson, I think, is at home and home. I have to look at the schedule. I haven't memorized the whole schedule, but I know that the schedule was pretty favorable. They got one of the books on the road already at Georgia Tech. But you're right, David. You think about the league. Maybe Florida State could be pretty good in time, but I think some of the teams that might get good in the league are going to do it playing league teams. So they're not going to benefit a lot on those computer rankings. So I think Florida State could be a really good team by February, but they're going to have to do it beating ACC teams that have crappy losses on their resume. I think there are a lot of dangerous teams in the league, but Duke is the only team in the league. If you beat them on the road right now, people would say that's a really good win outside of beating Carolina on the road. And I still think there's a giant question mark over the Tar Heels.
Yeah. Well, and I go back to last year when we were talking about North Carolina going into the tournament, and we talked about how dangerous they could be getting into the tournament if they got the right draw. If you'll remember, of course, all of that, none of that panned out because they just come out and laid the biggest egg that you could possibly lay against Wisconsin. So it didn't matter who they were playing at night. But we talked about it, that the seeding was so important because how deep could they go? And you remember we said, well, if they're in a situation, I would rather get a 12 and play a 5 the first round and get an 8 or a 9 or 7, 8 or 9 and play a 1 or a 2 right off the bat. So I look at it like that again this year. But I think this, instead of getting a 12 this year, I think we're talking about North Carolina. Could they move up to a 2 or a 3? I think that's something that this team could maybe good enough that we could discuss rather than a 7 or an 8. And then you're playing Baylor. I mean, I would rather obviously play down from a 3 seed and then play a 14 and a 6 rather than catching Baylor in the first weekend.
Yeah. So, and let me add one more thing to this too. I tweeted out the other day that they weren't ranked again. I do it just because each week when they're close, it's newsworthy because people look at the rankings. I don't think the rankings mean squat, but people want to know about it, so we report it. And they do it for a reason, so people like us report it. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was interesting because some people were kind of upset that they weren't ranked because they were 7-2 at the time and won 4 in a row, and they beat Michigan and won at Georgia Tech. Those are nice wins, but there were a lot of national media at the Mohegan Sun. I saw them there. And their perception of Carolina was really fulfilled that weekend, especially that Sunday against Tennessee. So in order to change the narrative about themselves, they have to beat somebody really good away from home outside the ACC. And this is their only shot. This is it, because they got App State next week, and then it's ACC play until March, until they get to the postseason. So if they're going to change, that's why they really needed UCLA. Mm-hmm. That could change the narrative. Beating Kentucky, if they beat Kentucky and they beat them soundly, I could see people saying more what's wrong with Kentucky than giving Carolina props, because I think Kentucky's sort of in that zone right now where you don't really know how good they are, and that Kentucky losing would be a bigger deal than Carolina winning. I get that. And that's not a complaint. It's just an observation. So to them, they wanted UCLA. They wanted that opportunity. But this is still the kind of game that could help them a lot, because Kentucky does have nice parts. And I don't know if they're going to get healthier, David, but they can get better, excuse me, I would think. And if they're able to go into the SEC and win a good number of games and have a top 30, top 25 RP or NET ranking, then Carolina will need that a lot. Because if Carolina cruises in the ACC, that's the kind of game where the committee could say, well, that was November. Who cares about that?
Yeah.
Right before Christmas, they beat Kentucky, and then they blitzed to the ACC. This is a number 2 seed or number 3 seed, whatever the case may be. So this game carries a lot of importance from them psychologically, from seeing where they are as a basketball team on the court, and also how it could affect the way that the committee discusses them in that room in March.
One other thing, looking at both teams, I'm going to say something about North Carolina, and I'm going to say something about Kentucky that may, if you've not kept up with them, may really surprise some people. I think for North Carolina's side too, speaking as somebody that's coached, I think it could really be a game, though, to legitimize Hubert Davis. Because if you beat Kentucky from where they were at the Connecticut weekend, and like you say, it may not have the clout right now as beating UCLA, but to me, if they keep playing a way that they're playing, I think they're playing very solid on both ends, and they can beat Kentucky playing very solid on both ends, then all of a sudden you say, Hubert Davis has done something that maybe a lot of us thought that he couldn't pull off in a short amount of time, that he has totally got this team's attention and turning around 180 degrees with the way that they're playing, because I think we 3 guys here could have went for 75 against them, in Connecticut. So that kind of tells you there. I got to
get my elbow in, man.
Jacob pass, I'll rebound, you shoot.
Point, guys.
Anyway, you're the boss. So naturally, you're going to shoot. So anyway.
Give me the damn ball.
So anyway.
That'd be the only play we win.
Give me the check. Okay. So anyway, Kentucky, here's the word. If you ask anybody, and I'm not saying anybody, if you ask a lot of fans of Kentucky right now, what is their biggest issue that they're watching, the biggest storyline that they're watching, they have a commitment from Shaden Sharp, who is currently the number 1 ranked player in the class of 2022. He's doing like Will Shaver. He's coming in at Christmas. And I think tomorrow's the last day of the fall semester, so he can actually start practice this weekend. Of course, they're playing, so it's when you get back Monday. But anyway, if they lose, I think that it will really amp it up, the talk and the pressure on Coach Cal that Shaden Sharp could be in a starting lineup within 2 or 3 weeks. He wasn't even supposed to play. He was going to do like Will Shaver. He was just going to be with the team. He was going to practice. He was going to work on skill. But now you're looking at a situation where the talent may not be in that backcourt like what they thought it was going to be, especially as a playmaker on the wing. He's that guy. So all of a sudden they're expecting a guy that's supposed to be a senior in high school to come in and save them. Kind of like Jalen Duren and Amani Bates at Memphis, bringing those guys in, all of a sudden they're saying, and it split that locker room. I think Cal's got a better control over it than what Penny Hardaway would have so far. But it's going to be very interesting because I'm going to tell you, if Kentucky loses, there could be a lot of panic. And like I said, now all of a sudden they're saying, okay, Cal's already got guys. Damian Collins he's a top 10 recruit. He played like 2 plays against Notre Dame and never got back in. So, you talk about a guy that cuts the bench down. Cal will cut it. You can start one game and never touch the floor again for a month. So he really cuts it down. So there's a possibility what happens here will have a major impact on their roster for the foreseeable future.
And I bet you Carolina fans appreciate chaos at Kentucky because the fan bases don't really care for each other too much. So if Kentucky's having chaos and Carolina could cause some of it, I'd be willing to bet you a lot of Carolina fans would probably enjoy that.
No, most definitely. Yeah, it's gonna be a fun matchup on Saturday though. Carolina set to play Kentucky instead of UCLA. A lot of stuff going on today, guys. So that's
one thing I've noticed covering both. If anybody asks me, and I'm gonna put this in, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna say it. You know me.
you know what they say when you say you shouldn't say something.
People have asked me, what's the difference, even in recruiting and things? North Carolina's buttoned up. If they're ice cream, they're vanilla, they're chocolate, they're strawberry. It's what you see is what you get. They're buttoned up. There's not a lot of surprises. North Carolina, or Kentucky rather, is a hodgepodge of about 40 different flavors that you've thrown in. You never know from day to day what's going to happen. And it's like that all the time. It changes all the time. And that's the big difference, just the way the way things go. It's just for it to be two, like you say, the 2 top programs in the country in college basketball. It's amazing the difference is just the day-to-day stuff. How they happen. I've told you this, man, your head would explode trying to keep up with it.
Wouldn't you say that the Kentucky fans are comfortable with that and the Carolina fans are comfortable with where they are? And if they had to switch places, they wouldn't be so comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. And, hey, if the 5 you've got on the floor are not producing, get them out of there, go to the transfer portal and bring in 5 players in January. I mean, that's the way it goes.
Switch the whole team up.
I have been around the Kentucky fan base a lot.
They'll tell you that. I mean, and I'm not. I love both. I love our subscribers at both places, man. They're both family, So what I'm saying, they have no problem. They'll tell you that. Yeah, that's the way it is, man. We want results, and we want it now.
Yeah.
One of the things I love so much about covering college sports, and I've covered all the pro sports a lot, is I love the differences in the fan bases. I love the culture of fan bases. And these two, when they meet, they don't have to wear their school colors to know who's who. No. You can just see them by the way they are. And I love that about both fan bases.
Yeah. 2 blue blood programs too. It's kind of crazy to see the contrast in them. You keep talking two of the best programs, like you said, if not the best in college basketball. But I think it's a good place to wrap this one up, guys. Carolina's set to play Kentucky on Saturday after UCLA is shut down because of COVID issues. So good matchup for the Tar Heels. 21st ranked Kentucky, going to be a tough one, but we'll see how the Tar Heels do. AJ, you'll be out there. I'm assuming you're still going out there, right?
Yeah, I'm going to have 7 a.m. flight. So,
nice, man.
And I don't want to hear
there's a game.
I don't want to hear you like Kyle Tucker and Gary Parrish and some of those other ones out there. Well, if we don't have basketball in Vegas, we're going to be bored. What are we going to do? I don't want to hear. I don't want to see a tweet from you. I'm in Vegas, stuck here for the weekend. There's no games.
Go hit the strip, right?
Who's me?
I will people watch.
No gambling, Age? You're not hitting the shopping center?
I don't gamble. I wouldn't know what to do. Yeah. I wouldn't even know how to pull a lever. I don't know any of that stuff. What I'll do, I'll find a good spot with a nice view may have one or two chilled beverages and just kind of soak it all in, and then just sleep.
I'd like to go to sports books and just watch games.
Yeah, I've done that.
I'm scared to go cancel everything. To me, it's kind of got a feel right now of that first night of the ACC tournament when you're just waiting to see what, because they're starting to cancel them left and right. And I hope it doesn't. I hope we don't go through that again.
Yeah, you're seeing that in a lot of sports too, not just college basketball. So it's a unfortunate time right now. Definitely giving me flashbacks to last year and the year before that. So hopefully the games will continue, and hopefully this game will continue. Hopefully there won't be any issues between the two programs in between now and then. But I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. He's been David Sisk. This is the first time we've done all three of us. I thought we maybe done it one time before.
I think we've done another one, yeah.
I think it was one
more.
We
need to do it more often.
We'll have to get another we'll call it the trifecta on here again sometime. So I have good job hopping on here, guys. I'll let you run, and David, I'm sure you guys had a crazy busy day with all this stuff going on. So I'll let you guys run. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well, and keep it locked to TarHeelIllustrated.com. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.